Welcome to Spirits and Cousins. I'm Tish.
I'm Courtney.
And tonight, in the spirit of Halloween, we thought it would be fun to discuss our most notorious investigations. Go ahead, give us some sound effects like ooh. As a reminder that spirits are everywhere, we thought this would be a good reminder to go through all these different places. We are going to cover not just different places, but there were different levels of anguish or solace and requiring different types of help from Courtney and others. So that's what tonight is about. And we've got a nice list to go through, Courtney. So I hope you're ready.
I'm so ready.
But first, we have to talk about what we're drinking. What spirit are you drinking tonight, Courtney?
I'm drinking Screwball peanut butter whiskey.
Who makes that?
Screwball.
It's called Screwball?
Yeah, it's really good.
Where do you get it?
Especially on ice. I got this at Costco, but often Total Wine has it.
Got it. I remember I used to go to Total Wines when I was working in Pasadena, and that place is crazy.
It is so fun to go into Total Wine.
Yes.
I love just going in and out of the aisles. And
so I guess we can assume that it has a tasty note of peanut butter.
Oh, it sure does.
Does it?
Yes. And you can also get chocolate whiskey, which is a different brand. But if you mix the two, it's a delightful Reese's Pieces like experience.
That sounds good. I think I'll have to try that. Do you have that one? I'll come over and try it with you.
I don't have the chocolate whiskey, but we can get it sometime.
Oh.
What are you drinking tonight?
So I'm drinking Traveler whiskey, and I was introduced to it by your father, Lee.
Wow.
Guess what else? It's a collaborative effort with Buffalo Trace and 10-time Grammy winner Chris Stapleton.
Oh.
So a lot of people like the celebrity stuff. And this is really good. And I don't think Buffalo Trace has done a collaboration with any kind of celebrity.
Not that I know of.
But this is great. And what's really nice about it, it's more of like a blend. And it has the notes that you taste in it are vanilla, almost like a shortbread cookie, caramel, and oak and maybe some fruit. So it's got like a touch of sweetness, and then it has some spice and toasted nut and oak flavors. I've really liked it. It made an impression. I'm gonna make sure I get it another bottle to have as a backup.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's good, and I'm sure they have it at Total Wine or Costco.
I'm sure. I'm also going to have it out with my dad for not telling me about this delightful sounding whiskey.
Oh, yes, you should. And he will probably listen to this and know that he is on notice to share.
You better.
Okay. Well, with that, now that we're all juiced up, we can talk about all these investigations and remind everybody out there that there are different types. And you have certainly been on many, some of which are challenging and others are creepy, and many of them are lighthearted and fun and enlightening.
They all are so fun in their own ways.
So the first one we're going to start with is a fan favorite, the Stockyard.
Yes.
And when I went through what we were going to talk about with Courtney, I had her kind of categorize these. So this one, the Stockyard, she said was challenging. I guess I would say it was kind of scary. There was some negative in it, but it was definitely challenging. So maybe you could give folks just a quick overview of the Stockyard and where it is and what it was, and tell us a little bit about that, and then I have a few questions.
It's an old Stockyard Exchange building in South St. Paul. It's been on for quite a while and has a big history, not just as a Stockyard Exchange building, but there's also some Freemasons there. It's been an event center for quite a while. So a lot of people and spirits drift in and out. And it has a lot of rooms on the top floors. So at some point, there's definitely a hotel in there.
And you went there as part of a team that investigates venues and things like this, right?
Yeah, it was a hodgepodge of friends. One person said, "Hey, let's rent out this event center for Halloween night and just see how it goes and do our own investigations." So a bunch of us went, and we didn't do investigations necessarily together as a big group, but we all split off and did our own things. And sometimes I was with one group of people, sometimes another group, and sometimes just by myself.
And did you stay the night there, or did you? I can't remember.
I sure did.
I thought so. Did you actually
Really
sleep?
fun.
Did you sleep?
I slept a little bit. I did not sleep a lot that night. Plus, I went from room to room. Like every hour, I'd switch rooms just to see what else I could experience.
So, what were some of the highlights? Can you run us through some of the highlights of that?
Um, the biggest highlights for me is just it was my first really big experience outside of what I had been doing with this other ghost tour group. And so it was one of my first really big investigations. And I was still trying to understand my own skills and how to use them. And I was very innocent and excited and incredibly curious.
And if I remember when we were talking about this is the one you'll talk about it later. If this is the one that something followed you home.
Yes.
Okay.
An entity followed me home. I did too much and I didn't know what I was doing. So it got me into
So,
a little bit of hot water. But I managed to
well,
deal with it and move it along. It wasn't harmful at all to me. Could it have been? Possibly.
what kind
Um,
of equipment did you use?
well, the biggest reason I knew it was there is because I did an EVP in my own home without setting intentions.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that can lead to if you've been listening long enough. And I did an EVP at home and I heard a growling, which was not normal.
Ah.
I didn't have anything alive in that space that would growl.
So that was lesson number one.
Mhm.
When we get back to the experience of it all, what were the key, if you could like narrow it down to the top 3 key experiences you had during this investigation, what would those be?
Dealing with the entity when I was there and thinking I knew more than I did.
Yeah.
I really learned about the consequences of not setting intentions. And I also had so much fun, which sounds slightly contradictory to the experience I had because it was dramatic and challenging. But it was really fun to use my skills and have them open more and be around like-minded people who also had similar skill sets.
Was this an example of where you can do an investigation and part of it may be challenging or maybe a little scary or negative, and then other parts of it are lighter and spirits and energies just needing help? Because you had everything here, right? You had
Yeah.
one that felt dark,
Mhm.
and then you had other that were just kind of fun and light at this one.
Yeah, you're right. Is the whole gamut of personalities that were there for spirits. And it just made me be more curious, despite having some challenges with it and needing to um, move along an entity. It it made me more curious. about the paranormal world.
Do you get an adrenaline rush while you're doing this? When I do them with you, it's adrenaline, but it's mostly because I'm scared or anxious. Do you get adrenaline rushes when you do this sort of thing? Because this one, it was a large building. There was a lot of different energies floating around. Do you get that during an investigation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to keep going and that's why I went from room to room. I'd stay in one room for about an hour and move to another one because I wanted to see what all was out there.
Was there anything in the room you slept in?
Yeah, there are several things in the variety of rooms I tried out. Yes.
But didn't you have a room that you slept in that had a bed or somewhere where you slept that night?
So there are a couple different rooms. I mean, like I said, from hour to hour, I went to different rooms. So
Oh,
I
gotcha.
would sleep for a little bit.
Okay. Gotcha.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think the first room I probably stayed in the longest, which was maybe 2 to 3 hours. I probably slept half
Wow.
of that.
And did you help anyone cross over while you were there?
Oh, I helped a lot of the spirits of children
Really?
cross over. Yeah. That's why the entity got mad at me.
And why were there so many children there?
He was just collecting the souls of children.
Who had been there or lived there or just would bring them there?
No, just would bring them there.
Oh, wow. So what creeped you out the most? What was, was there anything there that either creeped you out? I know creep is different than scary, but is there anything there that creeped you out or that you found kind of scary given that it was one of your first investigations?
I think the oddest experience there was we were in one of the tower rooms, it was a turret.
Yep.
And that was very suffocating.
Physically suffocating?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't suffocated, but it was hard to breathe. It was hard to catch breath and take a big breath or a long and slow breath. There's a lot going on in those turrets. But it was a really interesting experience.
Was there anything about this one compared to all the other ones you've done now that made this exceptional?
I think it stands out so much because it was one of my first bigger experiences outside of the tours that I would go on and the different places I would visit, especially the outdoor spots where there were native burial mounds, things like that. But yeah, what I liked most about this experience is that it was really my big jump into paranormal. And like you said, it encompassed a lot. There was an entity there. There was a school teacher there who just would look disapproving over everything. And just the variety of spirits that were there was exciting to experience.
I bet. Did you have any equipment back when you did this one originally?
I had dowsing rods and I had an EMF detector.
Dowsing rods and EMF. And did you use them or did you?
I know I used my dowsing rods. I think I used the EMF detector. At that time, also, that group I was hanging out with really encouraged phone apps. And that was when phone apps were very new. But I used it, but I never felt comfortable using it. And I think it's because I've always been concerned of the algorithms that are put into apps and that you could program for these different things to show up.
I agree with you. When you look at, and this is for everyone listening, you do need to question the apps, particularly when you pull an app up to use and you're interrupted with ads. Because typically apps are built to make money. With that said, they want to keep you on that app as long as possible. So when you open that app, they want you to stay on it for 15, 20 minutes, a half hour. The average user spends 10 minutes or less in an app, but these paranormal apps, they can stay on for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what these apps bet on with their ads. In addition, these apps build libraries of words, which is what you're saying.
Yep.
So the only way they're going to keep you engaged, the only way those apps keep you engaged is if they keep popping words up. And if they don't keep popping words up, particularly words that we all know we look for in an investigation, you're going to exit out of the app. So I'm with you. I don't care what anyone says. I would not trust the mobile apps.
No.
For that reason. If you open an app and it has advertising on it, that's like number one flag not to trust it, because they just want to keep you on, and they're going to keep you on by giving you hope with words and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like those anomaly things too, where the stick figures show up.
Yep. Yeah, is it the STS stuff? And some of the shows use that, but they're not an app. They actually are almost like a heat sensor. Well, I don't know what they're based on. I'm not going to go there because I don't know. But it's kind of like the heat, like the FLIR heat cameras and things like that. Those are looking at temperature, something real. But I don't know. I don't trust those apps either.
No.
That's a good tangent to go on as we go through these, because I'm going to ask you, we're going to talk about in each of these, what did we use?
Yeah.
Anything else on the Stockyard?
No, it just was such a great experience.
Okay. So we have something very creepy, as Courtney said, creepy as hell, coming up next when we were talking about this before we started recording. And that's Las Cochas, Adobe. And where is that, Courtney?
Soledad, right off of 101.
Soledad, California. And that is near Monterey. I'd say it's about 15 miles away, right off of Highway 101.
Yeah, it takes about not too long for us to get out there, but long enough for it to be a trek.
So we went out there earlier this year, and it was creepy as hell. And it was windy, dark. Then it started raining. And to remind everyone what Las Cochas was, or I guess the building is there, but it's not operating anymore. But it was one B&B, like a bed and breakfast, or for travelers coming through. It was also stables. What else was it, Courtney? Was there anything else?
Brothel?
A brothel. Yep. And that was in the hotel bed and breakfast part of it. But what makes this so notorious, besides what we're going to talk about and how creepy and haunted it is, was the owner of it was murdering people as they came through there, mostly gold miners and cowboys. Right, Court?
Yes, and would steal their gold.
Yeah. And then what would she do with them after she killed them? She would throw them down a mine shaft. And that mine shaft had miners that died in there from where a mine collapsed or something happened back in the 1800s. So she would kill them and throw them down the shaft. So this place is dark and it's creepy. And the night we were there, it was windy and rainy and howling. And we saw all kinds of shit.
We did. I don't get creeped out incredibly easy. And that place was very creepy.
And just for the record, Courtney stood outside. I ran back and jumped in the car.
You did.
What are some of the things we saw? We saw a lot there. Since I'm talking right now, I'll share with everyone what I saw. This was the first time that I ever saw something in action. In this case, there was a figure that was running from the side of one of the buildings to the building. And I kept saying to Courtney, it was almost like it was on repeat. It was looping is what it was like. And you told me that's residual, right?
Yep. That's not an actual spirit that has intelligence. It's a ghost.
Okay. Well, for everyone listening again, I will tell you, I saw it with my own two eyes, and it was running across this part of the field to the building, and it would just keep doing it over and over again. So that's what I saw, and that's what made me run back to the car and jump inside and lock the door so Courtney couldn't get in. And Courtney, because of her other skills, was able to communicate and hear voices, not just through the recorder, but you were sensing them and you were feeling what they were feeling. So maybe you could tell us about that. And by the way, this all took place over like 45 minutes. It wasn't long because it started pouring and we were creeped out.
And it was so cold.
It was cold.
Well, yes, very cold for this area.
So why don't you share what you heard and what you saw? Because there was a lot of stuff going on. And had we stayed the whole night, I think we would have just been overwhelmed with all the action going on.
Yes, I could feel the energy and the emotions of some of the men who were there. And several of them were tortured first. And that's what I could really feel, that there's a spirit of a man banging on the door, crying out for help, asking for someone to unlock it and to open the door, and no one was coming. And then all of a sudden she appeared and just tortured him and killed him. So that I could sense very easily. And then the other things that I saw, and I believe you also caught a glimpse of this too, is all the different shadows that were walking in the trees.
Yes. Talk about that a bit, because I had never seen that either. And you had shared with me what that was, and I didn't want to believe it at first, but you couldn't help it because I saw it with my own two eyes.
Yeah, that part was so fascinating to watch. Sim is more residual. They just kept walking back and forth over and over again. There's also part of this land too that where there is some type of native battle killings that happened there, possibly some torture for them too.
So that's
just very strong.
Las Cochas was the one that scared me the most so far. Now, Courtney's done a lot more and ran investigations, but I've only been on the fun, lighthearted ones mostly. I've had some creepiness, but creepiness isn't always something that makes you afraid. This place scared me. It scared me. I felt like something was going to come up behind me and grab me.
And we were safe the whole time. That is the nice part about it, is we really were. Nothing harmed us. But it is, I would say, the most creepiest place I've ever been to.
It felt it. I mean, there was just this doom and gloom feeling. Now I understand when people walk in and things you've told me, like where you go into an investigation and you can feel the weight and you can feel it was gloom. It was just grief and gloom. And we used a recorder. We used a camera that had night vision. We used a REM pod.
Yep.
Did we get hits off the REM pod?
We got some. We had some at first, and then it felt a little inconsistent to me. So that we stopped using it too. Plus that beeping, the noise it makes is really grating on the ears.
Yeah. That reminds me, for those of you that have considered or have gotten a spirit box, Courtney had one made, specially made for us, and she sent it back, and they were able to modify it because there was something on it you didn't like. Was it the red light that kept beeping on it? I can't remember.
Yes, it was I love the RoboBox. It was the red lights that were blinking that my brain just can't handle.
Yeah. Well, it's irritating. It's catching your eye the whole time you're trying to use it. So Las Cochas, we will go back there.
Yes, we will.
When it's not raining and cold and windy and scary.
Yes.
So that's Las Cochas. Stockyard was in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
South St. Paul.
St. Paul. Las Cochas was in Soledad, as Courtney mentioned, and that's the central coast of California.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have one that was not creepy, but was very enlightening and really fun because we had a spirit that really liked Courtney. And that is the night we spent at the Monterey Hotel. And that was also this year.
Yes, that was so neat.
And we stayed in the exact room that is the notorious room of the spirit. I think it was room 217.
Correct.
And that was the first time that I felt like a pressure where you can't breathe from a spirit, but it didn't feel scary. It just was, it was just a symptom of being in all that energy. So Monterey Hotel, it's in Monterey, California. It is older than the hills. How long is it? I don't know how old. It's been around a long time.
1904.
1904. And we spent the night and we had some interesting stuff. And then I'm telling you that Courtney had conversations the whole night with the main spirit that haunts the halls of the Monterey Hotel. There are some others we'll talk about, but maybe Courtney, you can tell us a little bit about a little bit of the main story behind the Monterey Hotel and what it's famous for in terms of its ghosts.
It's mostly, there's a couple different spirits that hang out, but it's mostly Frank. He's also sometimes called Fred, but when I talked with the Monterey Hotel front staff people, they often called him Frank. And he unfortunately passed away there. He was the maintenance worker. He was crushed by the old elevator.
Which we went to and looked at and inspected.
We sure did. He just is such a neat spirit. It was so fun to hang out with him he'd hang out for 20-ish minutes and then he'd leave for 20 to 30 minutes and come back for 20-ish minutes and leave again. And so it just really seemed like he was leaving to go fix things in the hotel and then he'd come back and hang out. But what also stood out to me the most is an experience you had there.
Yes. So the room was broken up into two rooms that were adjoining. And I think it's because of this Frank guy used those rooms as an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So he had probably, one room was his bedroom and the other room was a sitting room. I don't know. And I went into the room that was going to be my room and I had the fleur, right, Courtney? I had the fleur up and going, and I saw this thing run across the wall and out the door. The door was behind an armoire that they had put against the door to kind of make it into a room. And this thing ran across the wall, lifting its knees, its legs really high in the air. Do you know what I mean? It was weird. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because it didn't give off anything that was creepy vibe. It was just like something running, like I got to get the hell out of here. Like I was found or something. That's what it felt like. Like someone saw me. I got to get out of here. And literally it ran across the wall. You could see it was like its knees were lifting up really high. I had that experience. And at first it kind of freaked me out, but it was only for a minute because I could already feel that the energy wasn't a negative energy. I think I startled something. And so the one thing I wanted to mention when we got into the room was we were setting up all the equipment on the bed because if you all remember, we tend to try and start everything up and then we narrow it down to just a few things. As soon as Courtney was turning on REM pod, EMF, I think there were some other things we had going. Exactly. that Frank just started going at it. He was already there.
He really was. He was there right from the start.
Yeah. I mean, Courtney was getting activity within 10 minutes of getting into the room and putting our stuff down and putting stuff away.
We just wanted to go have dinner. We were both hungry.
Yeah, we were both hungry. We really just wanted to get everything up and going, leave, come back, and then spend our time walking the hotel. But we weren't even in the room for 10 minutes, and there was already stuff coming through. And Courtney started talking to him, and he was answering the questions so quickly.
Yeah,
And
he's a neat character.
and he was answering questions through the REM pod, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what else? Through the flashlights?
The flashlights.
Yep.
We mostly use the flashlights. It ended up being how he'd respond the most.
Yeah. So again, Monterey Hotel, there's not a dark energy there. It's people that were there. In this case, the guy worked there. He happened to die there, but it wasn't because he was murdered. He had an accident. So it was understandable. The other people there are folks that used to stay there that wander the halls. So we get to the room. I see this thing going across the wall. Courtney, we're already getting Frank coming through. We go to dinner. We come back. This is what's weird. There's been a lot of sightings in this hotel on the main staircase. So as we come up the staircase, as we get further up the stairs, I feel like there's this huge weight on my chest. And we get up to the top of the stairs, and I'm like, there's this pressure on my chest, and I'm having a hard time breathing. And trust me, it's not like there's a lot of stairs. I'm not having a heart attack or anything. And Courtney comes up the stairs, and I'm like, I'm feeling this heaviness, like I just can't breathe. And as we moved across the lobby area on the floor that we're on, it just like poof went away, and it was all normal. And it kind of scared me because I thought, there's something wrong with me. And Courtney, you were telling me, no, that's the energy doing that. And I don't know if it was the lady that was there, because there was that female ghost, but we had some of that happen throughout there, where we could feel pressure and things like that.
Yeah, we went up that staircase a couple different times, and each time, or not every single time, but most of the times we would feel that same feeling, and it would go away pretty quickly after, though.
So what, for everyone's benefit, including mine, what is that does that, and why does it affect people that way? What's going on? Is there something actually pressing against you, or is it pressure in the air? Or?
I think it's not meant to be harmful. I've gotten that feeling several times, and I've never felt that it means to be harmful or have us not be safe. I just think it was a spirit making its presence known in a different way. And that's one of the ways you can do that, is by having the pressure in the space.
Yeah. We walked the rest of the hotel. Did we feel anything anywhere else? Our floor was active.
Yeah, that was the main spot.
Yeah. What about downstairs by registration? There was something you shared where there used to be a mirror.
Yeah, so the mirror is now at the end of the staircase, the bottom of that staircase on the first floor. And that mirror used to be right across from the front desk. But when the people who work at the front desk would look up, they'd always see someone behind them, even when there's no one there. So then they moved the mirror to the bottom of the staircase then. And they still have said they often feel like they're being watched from that staircase.
Well, we felt it. We felt we were being watched on that second floor, but it never felt negative. It never felt threatening. It was just like people were watching us, kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't any big deal. I never felt unsafe there.
No. And again, the Monterey Hotel is in Monterey. It is considered haunted. And if you're visiting the Central Coast, Monterey, Carmel, Pebble Beach, make sure you pop in there, because everything we just talked about, you'll recognize as soon as you walk in. It's not a huge hotel like a Hilton or something like that. It has, I don't know how many rooms it has, but it's small. It's not that large.
But it's nice and it's clean.
It is. It is. And of course, we paid a premium because of that room. They know it too. So that's the Monterey Hotel. So Las Cochas and Monterey, both in Central California near Monterey. And we've got a few more before we switch back to another one in Courtney's past. So the next one is the Del Monte Hotel.
Oh, it's one of my other favorites. I mean, so many of these are my favorites. They all are just such interesting places. But I like this one and I want to just keep going back to check it out.
Well, it is very large.
Yes.
And it's now owned by the military.
The Naval Post Grad School.
It's great. It's beautiful. You know, it's got a very long, unique legacy of architecture and art, and you know, it was originally owned by Pebble Beach.
No, so it was close. It was the very first resort in all of the United States.
Yeah.
It was called Del Monte Hotel. And this is before it became part of the Naval Post Grad School. And what they did is from my understanding, they had all of the land that forms what is now Pebble Beach. And then they'd have celebrities come and be at the resort and just enjoy their time there. And then eventually they would buy up some of these parcels that are now called Pebble Beach. They had the 17-mile drive even back then, and they'd do it by horse and carriage.
And you know who originally built the resort was a guy named Charles Crocker. And for those of you that live in California, I might be dating myself. There used to be Crocker Bank, and that's the same guy. And it was really probably one of the most exquisite resorts in all of California back in the day.
Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful. It has this grand nature to it, but so much fun. And I love walking into that ballroom. That's my favorite spot in all of it, because it just is a spot where people had so much fun and really enjoyed socializing together.
Well, originally it was 20,000 acres. Well, that's the land that it was on.
Mm-hmm.
And like Courtney said, it was presidents stayed there and celebrities and actors and actresses, and you know, I guess it was quite the place. So we went there, and it was and it's now owned by the military, and Courtney has a friend who got us in there. And first I want to say that the architecture is just exquisite. It is a specimen of, you know, Spanish Mediterranean that's been kept up pretty well. The exterior, I mean, for as old as it is, and I know it had fires and had been rebuilt, it's just gorgeous. And, you know, you could tell as someone who's not necessarily an empath or a sensitive, although Courtney says I'm starting to develop some of that.
Uh-huh.
When you walk in, you don't feel any sense of doom and gloom. You actually feel that there was a lot of happiness that took place there. And it's huge, grand entrances and lobby areas that reminded me of Hearst Castle, you know, the size of them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to the big ballroom after going past what looked like it was some sort of control room where they had big important meetings, because the thing sat like 30 people. It was that is the longest conference table I've ever seen in my life.
It is huge.
I think it sat like 30 people, if not more. It was huge. I went in that room twice to look at it because I couldn't believe the size of it. And it was only 2 pieces of wood, like that made the top of it. But we went through there, and as Courtney said, there's a lot of rooms to investigate and experience. We didn't even scratch the surface, but we went to the main ballroom. And the main ballroom was grand. Wasn't it huge?
It was enormous.
It was, yes. How many people you think you could, if you're going to have like a
Gosh,
reception in there?
I have no idea.
I would say like 500, 3 to
At least,
500. I
yeah.
don't know. I've seen one that holds 200, and this was 2.5 times the size of that. Like when you go to a hotel that does conferences, you can kind
Mhm.
of get an idea. But since I'm sharing about this room, and I know Courtney has some stuff to share, this was the first time, everyone, that I actually experienced smelling cologne. Like you hear about these investigations where people in their homes or when they do an investigation, they'll smell perfume or they'll have a scent. Sometimes it can smell like death. This was like men's cologne. And I was standing there, and Courtney was there with two of our friends. And I was in a separate part of the ballroom. I was only about like 20 feet away, but I'm standing there, and all of a sudden this whiff of men's cologne would go past me. And it was one of those things where I felt like if I said something, no one would believe me. And I'm like, really, really? I did. And I think Courtney, you could tell that I actually experienced it. I was so excited. And then Courtney and her friends came over, and then it did it again with them there. And I felt so relieved that, see, that was really fun. And you could feel like everyone in there in their dress whites, dressed up
Yes.
in their whites, and they're all, being perfectly like perfect gentlemen, or, and you could see those big, huge dances going on there.
It was
And
it's such a neat experience, and I've gotten to go there a couple times now, and every time I'm just so in awe of this space and of the people who were in that space and the energy around it. It's just really beautiful.
yeah, we're going to go back. But before we left, we went up to, where did we go? It was like up to the top of the hotel.
Mhm.
There was like a turret where you could go on the roof, and then they had converted a whole bunch of rooms to like where they did their dentistry work or something for the military.
Yeah.
I went back in there, everyone. Pitch black. It wasn't really that creepy. I didn't. There was a few things I kind of sensed, but I didn't feel like there was anything back there. However, the lobby area up on that top floor, which I think was intended for people to go up there for drinks, like after dinner
Mhm.
drinks, and then you could go up to the roof, but that door was shut. And then there was another door that had stairs that went down, right, Courtney? There was a little door
Yeah, there
that,
were several doors that were locked.
yeah. And they all got to other parts of the resort, but it was really a neat feeling up there. You could feel the history. You could feel people walking around. I remember sitting in front of that huge fireplace. This room was like a third of the room was that huge fireplace. And I remember sitting there when we were sitting in front of it talking, and I could almost like picture and feel the famous people that would have gone up there after their meal to have cigars and drinks or whatever, you know?
Yes,
Um,
it's such a neat space. And it also was burned down a couple of times.
yeah. What's the deal with that? Now it can't, can it? I mean, it's all stone.
I mean, I don't know. I think anything is possible. But then there's also a big earthquake there. It has a pretty huge history for having some deaths there.
Really.
Mhm.
And a lot of famous presidents and leaders went there too.
Yes.
Was there anything there that scared you?
No, it was such a neat space.
Yeah,
It
I
just felt so
agree.
grand.
Yeah. You all need to look this up. The Del Monte Hotel. It's now military, but there's a long history to it. And it was called the Del Monte Hotel. And I have to get my plug in since I'm a golfer. And nearby is the Del Monte Golf Course. And that opened in 1897. That was probably built when one of the older versions of the hotel was there before it burned down.
Mhm.
And the Del Monte Golf Course is the oldest golf course west of the Mississippi.
Oh.
Just thought you wanted to know that. That's my little factoid.
I love it.
Is there anything else around the Del Monte Hotel? What did we use? We used an EMF.
We use EMF. We use flashlights.
Yeah.
There's one time I went without you also, and I brought the flashlights over to, there's a grand piano there that night. It was so fun. Then I played the piano for a little bit, and Spirit would interact with us with the flashlights and the EMF.
In that big lobby downstairs?
No, in that ballroom.
Oh, how cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's really fun there. You know, it's funny. You can tell that whoever was there, and it felt like a lot of military.
Mm-hmm.
At least when I went with you all. That doesn't mean there couldn't have been other people, but when I was there, it definitely felt like it was military to me, like a military dance. But what was interesting to me about that whole place is you could feel a sense of pride. Like whatever was there was happy and proud.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really felt more of the earlier eras, like 1920s ish time, and the
That's
resort space about it. That was really intriguing to me. And if you even think of um, Dirty Dancing, where they
yeah.
go to that resort,
Yep.
it's almost like that, but the Del Monte Hotel is more upscale, buzzing around and dancing and just fun variety nights.
I'd like to feel that there. I only went once, so I felt the military stuff more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love that era of the 20s, 30s, and 40s when old Hollywood. You know what? I bet you that there was a connection between the people that would spend time at the Del Monte and the ones that would go to Hearst Castle. It was
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah, because at Hearst Castle there was a very strict regimen. So if you were a guest there, maybe you probably flew into San Francisco, and you might stop at that Del Monte Hotel on the way there, because once you got to Hearst, and I know Hearst has an airstrip too, but not everyone flew into that airstrip. And I bet I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of folks would leave Hearst Castle and want to go to San Francisco, and they would stop at the Del Monte. I'm going to look that up.
Do it.
I'm going to look that one up. Okay, so that's the Del Monte. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, it's such a neat place.
And there was nobody to cross over. There was nothing that creeped anyone out. It was just energies and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could tell a lot of them were still there. They were happy there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're on to another one, a lighthearted one. And that's Point Pinos Lighthouse, and that's in Pacific Grove.
Mm-hmm. That was such a cool experience, and not at all scary, but just very memorable. Because I believe it was also one of your first times actually having a spirit interact with us as much as Emily Fish did.
Yes. Yes. What was great is it was not scary. Therefore, I was very engaged, and it was just a great experience. I would not want anyone's first experience to be creepy. That is not fun. As much as we like our ghost adventures and all those shows, that is not a good feeling when you're in that.
No. No. It's a lot more fun when it's lighthearted and kind and caring and joyful. Yeah.
Yeah. So Courtney's right. That's one of my, I think that is my first that I did with her. And the Point Pinos Lighthouse, I believe it was built in 1855.
Mm-hmm.
And it had several lighthouse keepers, but there's one in particular that we wanted to try to connect with, and her name was Emily Fish. And what was interesting about Emily Fish is that I Was she the only female lighthouse keeper there?
I believe she was one of the first female lighthouse keepers.
Okay. And prior to that, I think she was an architect, something like that.
I do not remember, but we did go find the address that she retired at.
Yes. The convenience of the internet. Courtney was able to find her house address. So after she was no longer the lighthouse keeper, she purchased a house in Pacific Grove, and we drove to it and saw where she retired and lived the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
She passed in 1931. She was the first lighthouse keeper that was female there. And interestingly enough, she was from Michigan, where I am right now. And what happened was, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a reminder for everybody. She ended up marrying her sister's husband after her sister passed.
Yes, she did.
Which was kind of strange. He died in 1891. Emily was 50.
And that's when she started at the lighthouse.
That's right. Soon after her husband passed, Emily Fish's son-in-law was an official at the United States Lighthouse Service and let her know about a vacancy at Point Pinos in Pacific Grove. So with his help, she applied for it, and she ended up moving into the station with her Chinese servant and luxurious furnishings because her husband was a doctor and they lived quite well. She was the keeper for 21 years from 1893 to 1914, and then retired and lived from 1914 to 1931 right there in Pacific Grove.
Yes, she was known as the socialite keeper because she loved parties.
Well, she was very social. You want to know something else, Court? She also kept French poodles, cows, horses, and chickens at the lighthouse.
Yep. Sounds pretty neat.
So we went there. I think we used a spirit box.
Mm-hmm.
And Courtney gets everyone to talk. She gets all these spirits to talk. I think it's because you talk to them just like people.
Yeah, I do that because I don't want someone to be all 20 questions on me or try and provoke me. So that's why I just try and treat them with the respect that I want.
So Courtney was there as I'm just listening, and she's just asking Emily Fish questions, and Emily is answering them. I think you had a spirit box and a flashlight, but she was using the spirit box, wasn't she?
I think that was when we first got the RoboBox.
Yeah. RoboBox. Thank you to
Supernatural Paranormal, Supernatural Inc.
That's right.
Katie Knox and Katie Stafford.
That's right. We interviewed Katie not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
But she was answering like Courtney's questions. We learned a lot. She was really happy there, huh?
Oh, she loved it there. She seemed really content.
Yeah, she didn't need any help with anything because Courtney asked, do you need any help with anything? She's there because she wants to be there, not because she can't cross over, right?
Yes, exactly.
So when you all travel to Monterey, Carmel, or Pebble Beach, which many of you will, you'll go to Central California for something in that area if you're a tourist. You've got to look up the Point Pinos Lighthouse. It's a beautiful little lighthouse. They keep it up really well. You can go inside and see where all the lighthouse keepers lived, what they lived like, and the area that's all around there. It's right on the water.
Yes, it was one of the first lighthouses in all of California.
Really? How about, was it there before Big Sur?
I believe so, yeah.
Wow. That's cool. It's so cute. It's a little thing. Okay. Anything else about Point Pinos Lighthouse?
No, it's a cool spot.
So you notice that we did a couple of the creepy and challenging ones first, and we're doing some of the light ones. But there's something all these have in common, and that is that Courtney investigated. Can people visit? They can go to the Monterey Hotel. They can go, if they know someone in the military, to Del Monte. That's harder to get to. They can certainly go to the Lighthouse. And the next one, they can probably get access to, but not the entire area. And that is Fort Ord.
Correct. There's been some interesting things happening around Fort Ord that I need to go explore because I think the place that we went to where we had the car experience,
Yes.
it might be torn down.
Wow.
I
So
have to
Fort
go look.
Ord, according to what, let me start again. According to what Courtney shared earlier, Fort Ord is mysterious. And then I put in possibly creepy.
Yes.
So a little bit on Fort Ord. Fort Ord is near Monterey. It was a fort, a base. It's a U.S. Army base, and it was built in 1917, and it was in use until 1994.
Mhm.
So it was active for many decades. It was 14,000 acres. And
Huge.
it's also part of the Fort Ord National Monument, which is also very haunted. That's another story. We tried to go there one night, and it, it didn't work out for many reasons. That's another story.
We'll try different night.
Yes. But as the U.S. went into World War I, that land was purchased just north of Monterey, and it was used for artillery training by the U.S. Army. And there were as many as 20,000 people on that base at once in its heyday. It could house 7,000, but on a day-to-day basis, there were people on site, off site. There were 31 dormitory buildings. And at one point, they sold some of the land on the east side of it to create Laguna Seca Raceway, which many of you listening might have heard of because it's a famous raceway there in Central California. And it was well used, I would say. Wouldn't you say, Court?
Yes. And if you happen to go hiking there, do not go off trail because, fun fact, there still might be live landmines.
Wow. Okay. Not to mention that the area still has some dump sites, and they use parts of it, all those acres, I don't know where, but they used it for like residential waste. That they did an EPA cleanup of the base in 1989. So interesting. It was an interesting location, and a lot of soldiers called it home. Today, it's much different. You have to kind of hunt to find the buildings that are still there. And if you can see them, you may not be able to get to them because they're all fenced off. And I know that Courtney's been there multiple times. I've been there with her multiple times. I think there's a little bit of everything there. There were spirits we spoke to that were directly answering Courtney, of course, that came back there, and maybe that was a happy time in their life. But you could certainly in other parts feel that it just wasn't happy. And I wouldn't say it wasn't sinister, it just wasn't happy. It wasn't like the energy wasn't there. And maybe it's because they were tearing the buildings down, and so the spirits there were sad because their homes during maybe some of the happy times of their life were being torn down. I don't know. So what do you have to say about Fort Ord? And I know that we use a lot of different technology and caught voices. And
Well, we also used the RoboBox there, and that was really fun experience for that. But the thing that will always stand out to me about Fort Ord is that ghost car.
oh gosh, yeah,
It is a mind-boggling experience.
I don't know if we'll ever experience something like that again. We were just talking about the ghost car before we started this podcast today, because the car was old enough. I was chatting with Courtney about this. The car was like a 68 to 71 Plymouth of some kind. And it was my job to be on the lookout because we were on a street, on a road that we shouldn't have been back there. But we did. We went back there. So Courtney's got her equipment out and she's talking, and I'm on the lookout. And I was standing right there, Courtney, in the middle of the street, looking down, keeping an eye out while you were on the side, more in the dirt by those buildings a little bit closer, doing your thing. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, this car is coming up the street. Now, I could see if it turned from the right-hand side or the left-hand side. I didn't see any of that. It just came flying up this road we were on. And we were about maybe maybe a half a mile up the road. And this car is flying up the road and it's going fast, like faster than a cop car would go on a road that's black and there's no lights. And I said to Courtney, I'm like, Courtney, there's something coming up the street. Look at this car. It's coming. It's flying. And I'm like, I don't know where it came from. And it's getting closer and closer to us. And our car is parked there. And probably about 15 yards before where we were, it's coming up and its lights are so bright you can't see inside, although I could see there was one person in it. That's it. It was one person in the driver's seat. And it gets about 15 yards from the car, and all of a sudden it turns right into this little chapel parking lot that probably could have maybe held 6 cars. And the next thing you know, it turns right into that parking lot and goes off into the blackness.
Into the woods. It's gone.
It's gone.
I tried to even chase it. I was like, I'm going. And you're like, Courtney, don't go.
Don't go.
I'm going.
I thought I was going to steal her.
A little bit. And literally little bit, meaning maybe 2 minutes.
And then.
But we couldn't see it.
No. And then Courtney came back and said, get in the car. Let's go over here with the car. So we went as far on the side of this little chapel. And I would say it was a chapel versus a church because it was small. A chapel.
For sure.
Okay, so we turned into that same parking lot with like 6 spaces. That tells you how small this chapel was. And you could still kind of go behind it. The blacktop ended and it went to dirt. The creepy thing is that we drove along the side of that chapel. I felt like we were in a horror movie. We drove along the side of that chapel and there were no tire marks on the ground. It was dirt.
None.
There were no tire marks, and that's where that car went.
There were no rear tail lights. There were no brake lights. There's nothing you could see that could show us where it went.
No, the front had headlights. That's it. Because it had lights coming at us, but that's it. And then it turned. And as soon as it got past the chapel, because it was going along the side, as soon as it got kind of towards the back of the chapel, which the chapel's probably only like 30 feet deep, maybe.
Oh, it's tiny.
Yeah. It just went dark. It was nowhere. Nothing was there. And we went back there and there were no tire tracks. This thing was going fast. You see tire tracks on the dirt. It was like dirt. And then behind it was woods, but there was dirt and cactus stuff and tumbleweed. But the point is there's dirt to leave marks from tires. And it was nothing. I went home that night and I'm like, that really happened. And I was like up. I thought about that all night. Because I think that was the first time I ever saw a ghost car. That was a ghost car. Other than that, though, we didn't
debunk it. Like we couldn't debunk it.
No. We were looking for tire tracks. Like that's what you would look for, right? You'd look for tire tracks into the parking lot too, because the road was kind of dirt. It was like old dirt asphalt. It was dirty, and it pulled and turned so quickly into the parking lot that it would have tire treads in the parking lot, and it didn't. So that was the one interesting thing that happened at that location, because we didn't really pick up on a whole lot else. I think you had one soldier that was kind of talking to you in and out, but you weren't having like a real meaningful conversation.
No.
But then we went to that other location. Where was that other location in Fort Ord where we went through the houses and then turned on some side street and we were back into the military buildings again.
We just were driving. We were fairly aimless that night, other than we knew we wanted to be at Fort Ord.
Right.
Yeah, that was a neat experience. We got out the robo box and we had some really cool spirit boxing with that. And we got to speak to someone who had lived there.
Courtney had a conversation with a guy who was a soldier there when he was younger and then moved back there when he was older. Was that it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Y'all can go listen to the Fort Ord episode. It's a good one.
Yeah. He moved back there and he was sad that it had shut down because he liked it. Because you were talking to him about it shutting down.
Yes.
And how he felt about that. But we also had some weird stuff while we were talking to him. We were talking to him and there was a building behind him and there was movement in the building. I kept seeing out of the corner of my eye. It wasn't him, but it was something.
No, it was a different spirit there. These buildings were all abandoned. No one was living in them.
Oh yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. Fort Ord. For those of you that want to go off and do your own self-serve ghost hunting and paranormal, Fort Ord. It's so big. There's still so many buildings left. And it's strange that you'll drive through a residential neighborhood, make a right, and you're back in abandoned army buildings again. And those are the kind of places you want to go. And you can do that yourself with dowsing rods, flashlights. If you have an EMF meter. Right, Court?
Yeah. It's a neat spot.
Okay, we've got 2 more left, including one of Courtney's favorites. But the first one is the Riverside Flour Mills.
There is an area of Minneapolis called Riverside. And that is where I would often hang out with some friends, where we would do some investigations. There's one particular spot. I always called it the Red Room because I didn't know what else to call it. And a man had hung himself there. And that's where I started learning about the pressure that would happen on the chest when you'd sense energy. And so to me, that was always such a neat place to explore. And again, just a variety of things happened there. I had a spirit show up in a mirror. I had these really odd, or it's not an orb, it's different than an orb. These pictures where you could see a trail behind it. It's just, again, just a really neat experience. And it absolutely told the story of the lives who've lived there in the past. And why I call it the flour mills is because right under that area is where there were caves where they would process flour and have flour mills there.
Did you use any tools of the trade there?
Yeah, that's where I learned how to do dowsing rods and EMF meters and pendulums.
Oh. Sometimes it's just the basics.
Mm-hmm. It often is.
When did you start using flashlights?
I would say within the last 10-ish years.
They seem to work like dowsing rods. They seem to work all the time.
They do.
Is this Riverside Flour Mills a place where people in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area can go themselves?
Yes, it's all right outside. I mean, not the buildings that I would go into, but yeah, the flour mills. There's native burial grounds right over there. There's a lot that's happening where if you just were to be outside in that space, you would feel the presence. It's right off the Mississippi River.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever investigate anything around the Mississippi River besides that? Rivers, I was reading something recently about rivers are not just a waterway for goods, can be a waterway for spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would spend time in Anoka, another place in Minnesota just off of the Mississippi. And Anoka is known for having tunnels, underground tunnels throughout it. And the tunnels would often lead to the river.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go in those tunnels? Can you go in those tunnels?
No. No, they're all closed off.
Got it. So did you help anyone cross over there?
Yes, a lot of people.
Really?
Yes. But one of the coolest places to go to is called Billy's. And I don't know if it's still a restaurant there. But that's where it used to be a brothel for people who were traveling up and down the river.
Was that a lot of who you helped cross over? Were they prostitutes? I'm curious to know why some
No,
areas.
it just was some. It just as people would be on their boats and stuff and barges, and that's where they would stop.
And die.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yes.
So that's Riverside Flour Mills. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, it's such a neat spot. Now, not only are there spirits that hang out, there's also fairies and different elementals, and then the native spirits. There's a lot going on in that space. That's pretty cool.
And for those of you that may not recall, Courtney really enjoys the experience of things like fairies and
Elementals.
I wanted to say experimentals, elementals, and things that aren't just about paranormal, but more about energy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that ties into all your energy work too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's ironic that she has caught on film these fairies and things.
I have.
Yeah, it's really neat.
I have some pretty cool pictures. I have some angels and I have some elementals. I
Angels
would
and
not necessarily
elementals.
say they're fairies, but they
Okay.
might be. I mean,
Okay.
I do have some fairies. I also have some more galactic cosmic presence too.
I think that there is a spiritual coffee table book in the makings here with all these pictures.
You never know.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to put that on the list. Okay. Now we have as our last story we're going to share, last investigation is one of Courtney's favorites. It's the Wabasha Street Caves. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Wabasha Street Caves. And this is really about Gangster during Prohibition. So I'll turn it over to Court and have her tell us about what this is and what she experienced.
I just had some really, really neat experiences there. And again, not creepy, but just affirming and so fun. So there's this place called the Wabasha Street Caves in St. Paul, and it's a cave that you actually go into, and they do tours there. And I believe they reopened. They shut down for a little bit. You can also sign up for, or at least you could back then, sign up for a bus gangster tour. And I've done that before because our family has, both sides of the family have big history with gangsters. So I actually took my dad on one of those. It was a blast. But the Wabasha Street Caves are where gangsters would hang out and have meetings. There's even bullet holes in the stone walls
Oh,
that
wow.
with shootouts. Yes, and I have some other really neat pictures from the Wabasha Street Caves that show there's interesting things that happen there.
Well, especially if there's like bullet markings and stuff
Oh,
inside.
there are.
That. Oh, I want to go there. I love all that mafia stuff. That combined with paranormal and investigations. I want to go there.
Mhm. They did mushroom farming there. It's been a speakeasy. It's been a gangster hangout. That's where they hid alcohol during Prohibition. It's been a meeting spot for so many different people. And when I last lived in Minnesota, it had closed during COVID, but every Thursday they would have dance lessons there, like
Really?
swing dance lessons.
So the public can go here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
is there anything in particular that they should see when they're there, or is it just the whole thing? You can see the whole thing.
The whole thing, it is just such a cool experience going into these caves. And it's really it's pretty dark in the caves. They do have some lights and pieces of it, but it's pretty dark in there, and it just is such a great experience.
Were there any spirits that kind of stand out to you that you connected with there?
There were several different ones, although I never got any names.
Mm.
But there's something that kept hanging out with us that ended up showing us this interesting orb pattern. And so it was 5 or 6 orbs that were circling around each other, like making an actual circle and spinning around. And then there's a spirit who really enjoyed playing basketball. There's an old basketball hoop in the street caves.
Wow.
And there's definitely something that was hanging out, enjoying playing basketball.
That's great. Anything else?
Oh, it's haunted by murdered mobsters who would just go to these meetings, and like I said, shootouts would just happen, and that's how there's bullets in the walls.
That would make it really cool, because kind of like what you say about the Monterey jail, it has markings and things on the wall left by prisoners that kind of make you feel like they're still there.
Yeah. John Dillinger. John Dillinger and Ma Barker went there.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Well, Ma Barker lived in St. Paul.
I didn't know that.
My grandpa on my other side of the family would deliver newspapers to her. He said she always tipped really well.
That's so cool.
Jimmy Hoffa was there.
Wow. Jimmy Hoffa's house is about 8 miles from where I am here in Michigan.
Wow.
His lake house.
We'll have to go sometime.
If it's still there too. And if you saw the movie The Irishman on Netflix, they showed him at a lake house. That's the house near here. That's where he kind of hung out most of the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should go there. So I guess those are the ones that really stand out in more recent years. And I appreciate that we made it a little more California centric, because I did some of those, but I didn't do all the ones that you had done. So thank you. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of a precursor. We'll give you a preview into our next episode, where we're going to share the top 10 paranormal vacation destinations in the world.
I'm excited to dig into those.
Yeah. And what's cool is all these places you can either do it yourself, but there are guides and tours that will take you to these destinations. Or if you get to these destinations, there are guides and tours that will take you to these places. So this is a good segue. We wanted to go through some of our top investigations. We wanted to take you to some of the top investigations that Courtney's done and that I've tagged along on. But it really segues into our next episode, where we're going to share with you our top 10 destinations around the world for paranormal vacations, and those for you.
There's so many. It'll be really hard to narrow it down.
I know. It's going to be hard. We've got a long list. Probably 2/3 will be here in the U.S., so they're available to folks. But there are so many international ones. And what gave us the idea was the recent interview we did with James Anito, where he took a tour to Romania and Transylvania. And that was our last episode that we put up. So be on the lookout. It'll be happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we look forward to having everyone on the next episode, when we go through top destinations to visit for your next vacation. So
hours.
Yes. Well, it might be skewed a little bit towards places we want to go to too. Yeah.
I mean,
true.
Yes.
I got a ton of miles. We can get it going. So thank you all. And don't forget, you can reach us on, Courtney,
spiritsandcousins@gmail.com. Our handles on Instagram and TikTok. Our handles on Instagram and TikTok is also Spirits and Cousins, and we're on Facebook as well. And YouTube.
That's right.
And not forget our podcasts on YouTube.
All of them. All of them are on there.
iHeart, Apple.
We're everywhere.
Message us, though. We want to hear about your really neat stories.
Yes, we want to have more people on telling their stories, which we did a pretty good job this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we want more. We want more of you to reach out. Don't worry. You don't have to be a great writer. You can just send us an email with your story. You can contact us. We'll help you with it. We want to hear from you. So until next time, I'm Tish.
And I'm Courtney.
And we're Spirits and Cousins.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.